Now, as of right now, Marvel and Disney together are really in a very delicate position. We know that the Disney heads, the board of directors, Bob Iger, they have absolutely no clue on how to specifically market the Marvels ahead of its November 10th release date, which, by the way, there were conversations on whether or not they wanted to cancel or delay this movie for 2023 and just move it till next year, and those are no longer in discussion right now over at Disney. They are doubling down on that November 10th release, and it's not looking good on their end. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. And one thing about Brie Larson that I think that we can all agree on here is that she joins the Insufferables, as I like to call them. That is, of course, people like Brie, Kathleen Kennedy, Rachel Zegler, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Amber Heard, and quite a number more. I guess we can throw Meghan Markle into the mix. But when you look at stuff like this, the fact that we have the Marvels set to become a box office failure, there's a lot of updates surrounding the ongoing blacklisting of Brie Larson in Hollywood, and we're going to be going over every single thing that's happening behind closed doors and exactly why. Now, we know that Brie Larson is and has been asking for this, basically because she's overly demanding. She doesn't seem to have any boundaries to what she wants to say, either on screen when she's doing interviews or on set with her co-stars and the cast, the crew, etc. What's even all the more revealing has a lot to do with the entire blacklisting situation for Brie Larson. Now, given that Brie is already preparing for the box office disaster for the Marvels, one major development has to do with her blacklisting in Hollywood that is getting quite severe, with recent studios making a final call and decision to abandon ship as quickly as possible. As it turns out, Universal Studios is now in the process of dropping Brie Larson due to herself making ridiculous demands for increased income for both Fast X Part 2 and Part 3, also known as Fast and Furious 11 and 12. Universal has also come to the realization that Brie is box office poison and caused Disney to shoot through hoops to course correct the marketing for the Marvels as well as the running time for the movie. Universal is now dropping her from those films and any other films in the process that they had conversations with her about as well. In addition to this, Warner Brothers recently dropped all conversations with Brie Larson to return in a planned MonsterVerse movie that would go back to her roots in Kong Skull Island, as Brie played a big role in that film. Warner Brothers is making a spin-off film that will be announced right around the release of Godzilla vs. Kong 2 that was supposed to bring back Brie's character in full fashion with a big role. Now guys, let me say one thing about that, is that we know that there's a lot of studios trying to set up their own universes that are going to be a Marvel competitor or something that could be just as good as Marvel, which I'm not quite sure if you'll ever reach that status, but it can be successful nonetheless. You know, we know that Universal is now trying to do this with the Nintendoverse. We talked about this, how there are a lot of early talks about the Super Mario Bros. Movie sequel and how that's going to lead into a Zelda film and how that can branch out into multiple other animated films. The other end of the spectrum for WB is this monster universe, or this monsterverse, if you will. And that they are trying to take off. They're trying to make that like the next new big thing. Now, this is where things get even more involved for Brie Larson, is the fact that she goes overboard. She was really trying to reason and trying to force both Universal and WB to drastically increase her income or her pay for these roles. Now look, this is where you step and cross the lines, where this is where things begin to fall apart when you're an actor or an actress and you're trying to really make all these negotiations in the financial realm of a studio. You know, we know that, especially nowadays, a lot of producers, a lot of people in Hollywood, they want to save money as much as they can with these projects. And that's exactly, you know, why when Brie Larson makes these demanding requests, that it really is just gonna come back and bite you. It really is, and it already has. Now, it's not just those reasons as to why they dropped her. They look at her role as Captain Marvel in Disney, and they have seen her in other projects before in the past that have not performed all that well at the box office. Speaking of course, you know, Fast X, we know that really did not do too well, not necessarily because of Brie, but she was affiliated with it, and that really wasn't a good image for her, of course, to the other studios. Now, moving onwards, this is where things get even all the more severe, is that this has, of course, now been dropped after the box office failure of Fast X and the expected failure of the Marvels for all conversations related to Universal and WB, and even Sony Pictures. Both Universal and Warner Brothers have doubled down to never hire Brie Larson again, and even other studios are taking action as well. Such studios like Sony Pictures, for example. Brie is seemingly joining the group of those getting heavily restricted from Hollywood, such as Amber Heard, Phoebe Waller, Rachel Zegler, and others. A similar situation also happened with Warner Brothers, where Brie was being overly demanding with them to increase her pay by reportedly double the amount for this spin-off in the Monsterverse, and even Nissan is looking to drop Larson from their commercials by the ending of this year into 2024 to focus on a new actress to present the Nissan Z car. Now, Disney has also dropped her from various roles, from cameos for the MCU TV shows on Disney Plus to make cameo appearances. She was even pulled from making a cameo in Deadpool 3 as Captain Marvel, as those plans were axed ahead of the Marvel's release date. And look, we talked about this, guys, beforehand as well, is that Disney is even beginning to phase her out. You know, she lost a lot of cameos for the Marvel Cinematic Universe on the Disney Plus side of things. She lost her Captain Marvel direct sequel, we talked about this too, and she was very angered about that behind closed doors. The other thing about this that really is very revealing is the fact that Brie Larson is not stopping. She is basically getting ready to make a lot of different statements once the SAG strike comes to an end, and she wants to begin to talk more about her troubles with Disney, her experience with the Marvels, and how there were so many cutbacks and drastic reductions in her scenes. And that's why the running time for the Marvels is so short. In fact, it is the shortest MCU movie to date. And that, of course, was not a plan. This was all due to cutbacks and was due to a lot of Brie Larson scenes getting the boot. Now, we know that this movie is already going to be an overly, I guess you could say, glorified Disney Plus movie at best. You know, this movie really should have gone direct to streaming, I feel at least. I don't think it's worthy of going to theaters. That's just my take on things. And from what we have been hearing about the test screenings, it's not looking good for the Marvels at all in any way. So November 10th, it's going to be a very interesting opening day to see how this movie's going to go, and 2 weeks after that to see how it really performs. Once you get to that point, you're going to really begin to realize where that movie's heading. So anyway, I would really love to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.
From night to moon we hear them moans again.